All right, today is January 24, 2018. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes CSI implementation group. We are near the end of January, which means that we've got roughly one more month before a code freeze on Kubernetes entry stuff. So we're coming up to it now. Let me share my screen and we'll go down the agenda. So PRs that need discussion, looks like we don't have anything. Bugs, looks like the Docker file and root is still open.
Yep. I'll take care of it, that's nothing.
Cool. Next up, tasks. Boring demo of CSI Sanity by Luis. Take it away.
Yeah. All right, so let me share my screen. And first I have to say that I didn't just do this by myself. This was a great help also from Edison Zhang from Huawei that just, I just kept throwing tasks at him and he just kept committing them. So it was great. It was absolutely great. So let me just give you a few seconds of what CSI test is. It is a sanity test. It is not meant to today, maybe in the future someday, but its main goal is just to keep it simple. It's just to check the APIs that you're sending, make sure that the APIs are to the spec where it says this is required, this is not required, and things like that. So let me just show you some of the code first. So we got in package sanity, we got these packages. So let's go, for example, to identity. And in this is all based on Ginkgo, the test utility. So here's, for example, that plugin info must have a name and it must match the same, the style that is accepted by the spec. This is just one example. Another example is in the controller that your, for example, in controller get capabilities, you must fail if no version is provided. Things like that. That's what it's about. So there's a lot of tests here, again, that Edison Zhang and myself wrote. But let me now run the stupid demo. So here I have the mock driver running on an endpoint, okay, from the EMC. And then I run command, run sanity, and I can run, let's see, help, and I can go like this. So I can show you the help, the arguments for each one of the subsystems is divided. So Ginkgo has its own subsystem. It's really nice because now you can say, I want just to test this, or I want to test this and skip these two. So depends on your driver, you can have it skip certain tests. You can provide the mount point and the endpoint. So what we're going to do now here is that we're going to provide the endpoint to /temp/CSI sock, which is what this one's running on. See it right there? Okay, so we're going to, oops. Oh yeah, of course. CSI endpoint. There we go. That's it. We're done. It ran all 45 tests. So cool thing is that we can say something like Ginkgo B for being a little less boring by actually showing the output and showing you the steps that it does. For example, for controller unpublish, it creates a volume, it gets the ID of the node, it publishes it, then unpublishes it, then deletes the node, right? So, and this is something we can do for any driver because all we need to do is point it to the endpoint, right?
Nice.
And yeah, so now we can say Ginkgo like focus on just controller test, and it will skip all the other ones. See? So again, this is all powered by Ginkgo. But anyway, it's done. So this is sweet. We're going to move this, then start using it. CSI Sanity can be used in two modes. One is the command line program, which you just saw here. The second one is as a part of unit test. So it's in Golang. So you can include it as part of your unit test, and it will run through the same suite. It's completely compatible. So I'll be doing that for the CSI drivers that we have in Kubernetes CSI.
So next question is, what are the steps to get this into CSI proper? I think you started the conversation with Julian.
Yes.
What's the status of that at the moment?
Right now, the status is nothing has changed. What I will do is I will present it and the mailing list. There will be some discussions around that. But I think there is I just want to make sure that we put the requirements correct. Is that let me just stop sharing my screen. That I want to make sure that the CSI sanity test is meant for a simple smoke test, right? It's saying it's a quick, as you saw, extremely fast. I mean, because of the mock driver, extremely fast way to say it does what it needs to do, and then we need to develop a verification system. Now, could this
certification system? You mean?
Yeah, certification. Yeah, could this move to that? Maybe, but that's not my goal. My goal is to make it a smoke test.
Yeah.
So
I think that makes sense. Talk to Julian offline directly. Establish that maybe this should be the first step, is having a smoke tester, a sanity checker that you have. See what they have. Merge the two projects together. Get it into the CSI spec repo, so that every time we cut a spec, it ships with this sanity tester with it.
Awesome.
And then folks start using that to start testing their drivers as they write them against the spec. And then, when we start talking about certification, you're absolutely right. It's going to be more than just this. When we get to that point, we can start talking about it. Most likely, it'll include this as a minimum, viable.
That's likely. That's what I think. It's like a tier thing, right? Yeah. It's like, can you at least pass a smoke test? And then can you pass this? Can you pass that? Right? So, I mean, this doesn't do anything with item potency, right? It doesn't do anything with going in a multiple. It doesn't do any of that. It just says, I sent this API. I expect this result. That's it. So.
Okay. So yes, talk to Julian, set the expectations, and start merging the projects. This is great. Very excited about this right now. All right. So next up is going back to the agenda. Updates on what folks are working on. Vlad, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. The first item, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. I wasn't sure if I was still on mute. The first item is it dawned on me earlier this week that there was still to-dos that I don't think everybody volunteered for. So I went back to the code and gathered up a few the remaining to-dos and created issues for them so that they don't fall through the crack. Whatever we can get to, or I can get to this quarter, will address. Some more critical than others. Like for instance, the probing, and then the question that was raised. We could talk about this a little bit later, but the question about controller capabilities. So we need to address those. There are a couple other tasks that have been open as issues, and they're all based on to-do tags that were still in the code base.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that they don't fall through.
Cool.
And then the next item I just added is the Csi Persistence. So the update on that, I talked to Jordan, and he told me where the update needs to, or the comment needs to go to mark the API type as beta. It's basically in the persistent volume. We just need to put the comment on the field itself.
Okay.
And then the other tasks are make sure the gated parameters are also updated.
Cool.
I have an issue for that as well.
Perfect. Feel free to link the issue underneath the task.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right, cool. That sounds great. And for the issues that you opened, I want to make sure that we don't lose track of them. So if they are feature level stuff, feel free to add them under the task list here.
Okay.
If it's bug level work, throw it up into the bug level stuff. That way we're, constantly keeping
Follow them.
track of it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. I don't know if we need to go through the entire list today. Does anybody want to give an update on anything that they've been working on?
Yes. Felipe
Awesome.
here.
Felipe, please.
Finally I did some work, guys. Sorry about taking so long. And sorry for spamming the Slack channel also. Let me just paste a link here to the chat so that you folks can take a look. I just did this really quickly to be sure that I'm working on the right place. The task is the make volume attributes first class. So basically, right now it's an annotation on the volume spec, and now we want to have it as a first class field. So I did this quick work so that you guys could check if it's more or less that we want to do. Of course, we need to change the tests and maybe document it somewhere, but would you mind taking a look?
Yeah.
Really small.
Quick and dirty, just look right now. I'm looking at the types.go file. This is pretty much what we need inside the CSI persistent volume source. Vlad, could you take a look at this offline as well and make sure this makes sense?
Yes. Sorry. I will.
Could you put it on the Slack channel, WGCSI, so we can see it too?
Yeah. Sure. Sorry. There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah, no PR for now, just a branch on my fork. So.
Okay.
So yeah, I just wanted to validate that that's what we should do. And
I was gonna say, go ahead and open the PR.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because we know it's something we want to do anyway. So.
Yeah, I should track it with a PR. What we are looking for, from what I remember too. So yeah.
Okay, and about the annotations, Chakri, in my draft I just removed it and used the attributes directly, but maybe we should think about whether we should keep it, but I guess we can talk more offline too.
Yeah, since it is alpha, right, I think we should better remove it because the longer we keep it, the longer it will be harder for people to think, right?
Sure, so, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And one more thing to keep in mind is that Nick Wren is working on moving the volume attachment API to beta. Actually, now that I think about it, this particular feature doesn't touch the volume attachment API, so you don't have to worry about that. Never mind. But in general, anything that we have to do with volume attachment, we need to keep in mind that the volume attachment is going to exist in two places, V1 Alpha 1 and V1 Beta 1. And so any changes that we make, we need to be conscious about whether we're adding it to Alpha or Beta. Some of the new features will go into Alpha only initially, and things where there might be cases where we want to have parity in both Alpha and Beta right off the bat, and we'll just need to look at those at a case-by-case basis.
Is there
right? But the task just under it from Vlad will actually change the volume source to beta, right?
So the interesting thing is that the CSI volume source was introduced in the core V1 API. So from the technical perspective, it's only exists in one version, which is V1. But the only differentiation between alpha, beta, and GA is a comment on that API saying it's alpha or beta. Volume attachment is different in that it was actually a separate API group. Technically, we should do that with CSI volume source, but that's not what we've done with the entry volume plugins. They always just go straight to the V1.
All right. Sounds good.
Cool. So it looks like lots of progress in all of the P0s. Hopefully, mount propagation gets some progress as well. Cool. Anything else anybody wants to update on or add?
So is there a PR for the work that Nick Wren is doing with a type?
Yes, he shared it with me. I can find it offline, and I'll post a link here.
Because I want to watch that.
That would be
because
great.
I'm guessing once this is moved to beta, the few places inside the internal driver where it's calling the API would need to change as well, right?
Yes, and I think he is making the change in the same PR, so it would definitely be good to get you to take a look at that.
Okay, awesome.
Yep. Hey, one update from me: the device registration model. So that Vikas actually pinged me, and he's willing to work on it. So right now he's working on it. I'm going to help it review it and make sure it works.
And sorry, who's working on it?
Vikas Chaudhary. Yeah, I think it has over there. Vikas C.
Okay.
We have it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Cool.
So you open the PR. I'm going to review it, and I'll make sure that it works for CSI.
Okay. And we're aligning with the correct proposal. I think there was 2 proposals, and one was more preferred.
Yep.
Okay. Great. That is awesome.
Okay. Perfect. And the other one is for the probe call, right? I just opened it in the CSI spec. I opened a PR. I actually pasted the code here.
Oh, did you paste it in the agenda?
Yeah. I didn't paste it in the agenda. Actually, I pasted it right below the item.
So, which item is it?
Just search for probe.
Probe.
That will be quicker. No, one more time. It should be right below that somewhere. Wow, maybe I had repeated so many times.
I thought I saw XXX probe right above that.
Here we go.
Over here. Actually, it's not hyperlinked. That's the reason. Okay. 171, yeah. Yeah, today we have identity service, right, which already discovers and all the stuff. So why do we need another probe request when we cannot avoid? A service can crash and come back up. Even in those cases, you will still have the same error codes as the probe. Actually, if you look at the documentation from the probe, it's very ambiguous. It says that before making any service RPC call, you need to call probe.
Yes, it is ambiguous, and I've had that discussion.
So I think the purpose of probe was to be somewhat like, well, there was 2 intentions, I think, and maybe that wasn't clear, which causes the call not to be very clear. One was to ensure that the dependencies that the volume plugin has are present on the underlying machine. So for example, when you call probe on a host machine, it should verify that the mount utilities or kernel driver or modules or whatever it needs is present on that host machine before it proceeds.
But a plugin won't declare itself ready before having those checks, right?
I think, that's a good point. Like maybe this does not need to be exposed in the API. Maybe this is a check that the plugin should do implicitly, and if it doesn't pass that check, then it doesn't accept. It'll just fail all subsequent calls because dependencies are not met. So the second purpose of this call, I believe, was health monitoring to ensure that everything remains in a healthy state as far as the plugin is concerned. This is a little bit vague because health is it's unclear. What does health mean? Does it mean the health of the volume plugin or a particular volume? Health of the volume plugin is a little bit strange. Like, what is that really worth monitoring? Health of a volume makes more sense, but this call is not per volume, so that doesn't help. So I think I agree with you. Maybe probe should be eliminated and clarified and resurfaced in new calls.
Okay.
I can I'll mark it 0.2, and feel free to add to this and with this background information and say, considering this was the background, maybe we should clarify it.
Okay.
All right, cool.
So does that mean just hang on to the task of identifying where in the
Yeah,
where to make
because
those
it seems
calls?
like there is ambiguity about what the purpose of probe is. So let's not introduce it on our side until we're ready,
Okay.
until that
Sounds good.
clarification has been made.
All right. That works. Um,
In our driver in Portworx, we just make it a no up because it didn't seem like we just couldn't get to see why it was needed.
Yeah. I'll add a comment to this right after this meeting with what I just said. I think I can see us removing probe and then reintroducing it as some sort of health call in the future.
Yeah.
Identity service, which establishes the identity. So what do you mean by identity service? Like, I don't see what the relationship to probe is.
I'm trying to say is that because probe is the one which says that whether a service is ready, right? When you call identity service, you're already establishing that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So
yeah. Okay, cool.
I just have some status. One is Quay is set up, and
Okay.
I have Vlad and Chakri added as team members. So if anybody wants to participate or be part of, be able to push and create repos on Quay, let me know.
yes, I will do that today. I promise.
No, Chakri, you're on it already.
Yep. Now I want to push the email, the drivers which we have today.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yep.
Okay, so let's mark it to do until that happens.
Yep.
So question here is, have we closed on, are we moving away from the Docker Hub altogether?
Yeah.
Okay. And okay, that's fine with me. And to do...
I need to update E2E tests.
And update tests. What do they call it? Repo?
Registry.
Registry. Cool.
Yeah, that's all set. What else? This week, I will still send a patch for versioning in Kubernetes. And next week, I'll work on my other tasks, which I forgot as well. So.
Cool. So in terms of priorities, make sure that you're working on any changes to the Kubernetes core or related changes first, and then everything else, because that's the one with the closest deadline, which is end of February. David, do you want to give an update to folks about mount device?
You're on mute. My microphone is not working, he's saying.
No, okay.
I tried talking earlier.
No worries. So mount device, David is working on. He introduced a PR in the container storage interface to add it. There's some pushback from G from Mesos about whether this is required or not. I think what it raises is questions about access modes in the CSI spec. I think that's something that we're going to need to clarify before 1.0 or before GA. The Kubernetes access modes are a little bit strange in that we allow folks to, as long as a volume, we don't really limit access modes or enforce access modes. So people can do weird things like if a volume that only supports attaching to a single node, we allow workloads, as long as they land on that same node, to mount the same volume and all read and write from it.
Actually, we don't even do that today, in Kubernetes.
We don't have any special logic to block it. There is logic.
Scheduler.
So basically, it's a free-for-all, right? Like if somebody happens to reference a volume from, let's say, 3 different workloads, and all those workloads happen to land on the same node, then all three will be able to successfully mount and interact with that volume. If they happen to land on three different nodes and the volume plugin doesn't, fails on multi-attach, then only the first volume that got scheduled will go into running state. The rest of them will remain pending with the failed attach.
So let's say if I have a workload, right, and the workload uses a pod, and which is supposed to go on to, it can go anywhere, but there's already somebody using that volume. Today, the scheduler has no logic to pin it to the same node.
Right. Except for local storage.
Except for local storage, you're right. Perfect. Yeah. Yep.
And there is logic being added to allow essentially data gravity to be more general than just local storage. But the thing is, it will not be associated with the access modes defined on the PVPVC.
Yep. Okay.
And there is a concept of access modes in the CSI spec, and those don't necessarily align. In the CSI spec, we said that essentially it's either it's multi-writer for workloads or it's not, or it's single writer for workloads. You kind of ignore the concept of nodes. So you in CSI you don't get into this case where you could have a volume that can attach to multiple, or attach only to a single node, but possibly multiple workloads on that node. And that's a gap. It will be an issue if we ever start migrating volume plugins into CSI, because that'll cause a regression, and then it also causes confusion about this mount device call. Like, is it really necessary in that case? I think there are
actually even in plugins. Sorry for the interruption. So even in today in Kubernetes, there is nobody who uses a mount device call for mounting files.
For mounting devices, or?
Yes, mounting devices, right? So the mount device call, if you remove it today in Kubernetes, I don't think it will hurt anybody.
I think it is used by, for example, GCPD.
For only, again, read-only devices, all read-only.
I think it's just part of the standard operation. So if even if you have a single read-write, mount device will mount the volume to a global path, and then the setup at operation will bind mount from that global path to the final.
So for that to work, the scheduler has to pin your workload onto the same node.
You're saying if you have multiple workloads that use something that can only be attached to a single node?
Yes.
Yes, which it currently does not, and so it may or may not work, depending on what happens. So it's non-deterministic behavior, which is bad, which we shouldn't have done. Okay, no worries. I got to run. Let me. Let's take this conversation offline.
Okay.
All right, guys. Take care.
See you guys. Bye-bye.
I don't think we met in person yet. Maybe already in the Palacios.